Well, good evening and welcome. This is pjnet.tv, and yes, we are working tonight. My microphone is working as it was last night. But here it is, the third Thursday of November, and that's a special day. You know why? Because one of our own, Miss Katherine Pasour, joins us on this time of the month every month, and she comes to us. Now, you're at a different location, aren't you?
No, I just moved. I'm moving around my house trying to find a place that has a good background and good lighting. But
Well,
the lighting is definitely bright.
it's a different location within the same location.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it's good because, for a while you were using your church's internet connection, and
Yes.
but since then you've moved up in the
I
world
moved
and,
up in the world. Got
yeah,
cable out
got
here in the
real
sticks.
real internet, and that's good because, well, me too. I mean, it was only last March that the cable company made it to where the Eagle's Nest is located, and things have gotten better for us since then. But you use what you got while you got it, and
That's
but
right.
it's not. It doesn't matter what you can't do with what you don't have. What matters is what you do with what you have. We could preach a sermon on that, but you have a
That's
different
right.
sermon in
Good.
line tonight, and I enjoyed reading your sermon, or I think you called it a blog.
I call it a blog. Yes.
So tell us what God's put on your heart tonight, Miss
Okay.
Catherine.
Well, I have this friend who talks about this fourth quarter aspect of our lives, and I got to
Must be a
thinking
good friend
about
because he's
things.
right.
Well, yes, he is, but that doesn't mean that we can't be active and functional and serving during our fourth quarter. But let me back up just a little bit. In 1997, our church was struck by lightning and it burned. And the damage was so bad from the fire and the smoke and the water that we had to tear the building completely down and start over. And we were blessed to have this um, man, friend, mentor in our church who was also a very gifted person with making things from wood. Oh, and you got the picture. And you can see the whole thing in my blog. It kind of cut off the altar table. But this is not the extent of what he was able to build. This is just two items actually. The one with the crosses on it is the pulpit, and the table in front is the altar. But he also made railings and all candelabras and music stands and all kinds of stuff. He's just a very, very talented man with wood. But at the time, he was already in his 90s when he made all this stuff. And it was just such a blessing for our church that for him to do that and for him to share his gift with us. And that reminded me that even in our fourth quarter, that we can be still making contributions to others, to our church, to others all throughout society. And he was just a wonderful, wonderful example for us. He's since gone to be with Jesus, and we miss him, but he's probably up there in heaven building other things. So, but he left us a legacy. But I also wanted to point out that this past Sunday, my church sponsored a book signing for me for Honoring God with My Body, Journey to Wellness and a Healthy Lifestyle. And this very young man, he's not even a teenager yet, he loves to come to all of our functions, and we love to have him. He's extremely exuberant, enthusiastic, and he just wants to help. Well, he helped me a lot by carrying things and delivering different packages to different places in the church. But he's kind of small, so he really struggled with some of those heavy boxes. But he says, "Oh, please, please let me do it. I just want to help." So my sermon, as you would call it, of a blog, was referring to whether or not we are an encourager. And do we encourage our young people who really want to do things to actually contribute? And do we acknowledge the gifts of our fourth quarter folks, their great contributions? And I think I'm probably as guilty as any of us with just taking things for granted like that and not acknowledging some of those awesome gifts. Because typically, I mean, I could have told the little fella, I said, "You look, you're just too little. Let me do
Mm.
it, or let me get somebody bigger to do it." But I just helped him carry some of the things and made some of the boxes not quite so heavy, so that he could actually participate. And he just had this big grin on his face, and he was just so glad that he could help, and I was so glad that he could too. So I want to remind folks, and myself included, when we write blogs, most of the time it's because we see this weakness in ourselves. Well, maybe I shouldn't say most of the time. Shouldn't speak for everybody. That's making too much of a generalization. But lots of times, we see these lessons and we learn from them, whether it be on the farm or the ranch, as our friend JD shares with us often, but just in everyday life. God sends us lessons, and it's up to us whether we want to learn from them or not. And I really did learn a lesson from this young fellow as that it's important to include people when they want to participate, because if we don't welcome their service, it might cause them to give up. And I don't want to be a part of that. So I was really glad that it worked out that he could help us so much. And the Bible tells us that the Lord's tell is clear about we're not ever too young or too old to serve. And in Jeremiah, the Lord said to me, "Do not say I'm not too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and I will rescue you." And oftentimes, aren't we afraid to step out and do things because we might be rejected or we feel unappreciated?
Well, let's take a dive. Let's take a dive because you're onto something, Catherine.
Okay.
You covered it, from the 91-year-old man that you would think would be, quote, too old,
Hmm.
to the young man that helped you, who you might think was too young. In fact, he was. I think he said he tried to carry some apples that were a little bit more than he was his frame could handle. But why? I ask myself as I listened to you speak and as I read your blog, why is it that the burden of service falls on the shoulders of too few? And this leads to burnout, among other things. But let me ask you this: let's look at it generally. What prevents most people from serving in the Lord's kingdom as they are called to do and should do? What do you think is the biggest reason?
Well, I think there's several things that combine, and it can be different for different people. For some folks, it's fear. It's fear of failure, fear of not having the skills that they need. It's fear of trust in God that He will equip them to do what they're called to do. They think they are unworthy and not able to do it. But for others, it's like a motivation. They might be overly busy, overly committed, and they don't feel they have time to participate. And some folks, I'm not sure of a kind way to say this, but some folks attend church or attend functions or their job and just do the minimum. And that's tragic, I think. I think God calls us to use our gifts in service and to do our very best in whatever task we are doing in service to Him or in service to others. But what do you think?
You've made some very good points, and I would make the same points. But I'm going to add some, and this one grieves me. Where I grew up in church, it was dominated by people as old as I am, and older. And
Set in your ways.
they had been in those positions since I was forever, and the only way that they'll ever not be in them is to be dead.
Hmm.
And I was perfectly willing to serve, but they wouldn't move over.
Right.
They held on and held on. And of course, it was a big ceremonious thing when the deacons marched in and led in prayer and all that. And some of them, Catherine, I mean, they just huffed and puffed getting up the 2 steps to the podium. It was rather, well, shameful. And I don't want to, I'm not questioning their heart. But I think as mature Christians, as seniors, we need to be conscious of recruiting younger people to take our place and give them an opportunity to serve under our watch care. And when I was given a Sunday school class to teach, the very first thing I did was arranged for my replacement. So I said, we need a substitute teacher. And I said, but be aware that the substitute teacher is going to teach once a month. So I stepped down once a month so as the substitute. And of course, that keeps people from, it adds a little variety. It gives them experience. It gives a different point of view. And so I think that many of us, older, more mature, senior, fourth quarter Christians, need to be conscious to yield the platform that we've been given to younger people and recruit them. Another failure that I see is you'll hear this at a funeral, for example, or if somebody's fallen ill and they're in the hospital. And we will say things like, well, if there's anything you need, just let me know.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't work, does it?
No, it's a platitude. Of course, in their defense, they don't know what to say. They don't know that they should just pick something and say, I'm going to bring you a meal, or I'm going to deliver something to you. We really need to pick something and say, this is what I'm going to do. But people just don't know. And it's hard to know what to do in situations like that. But that's the
Yeah,
one thing you
but
said. I'm sorry, go ahead.
we need to volunteer ourselves. We need to volunteer. We don't. If we wait until we're asked, that could be never.
Hmm.
And I can remember there was a death in the family, and in the next couple of days before the funeral, one of the people in our church, one of the men, I woke up to the sound of a lawnmower running outside. He was mowing the grass.
Hmm.
And it's not that I couldn't do it. I could. I was a young man. But he didn't ask, can I come over and mow the grass? He just mowed it.
Hmm.
And there are several acts of service. And I think sometimes what may hold people back is you mentioned fear, but fear can take a lot of forms. What
Right.
about the fear of committing to something that you can't get out of? You
Or
know,
that you can't do.
well, you can do it, but you don't want to do it all the time. I got caught in a situation where I was asked to go pick up this young man to attend church, and he was disabled, partially retarded, and he had issues. But I picked him up week after week after week, and I asked others, look, I'm glad to do this, but am I the only one that's glad to do this? Can't we rotate it?
Hmm.
Why does it have to be me every single time? And I wonder how many people, would consider volunteering to maybe run the soundboard or whatever job or duty is in the church, but they're afraid if they start doing it, they'll never be able to get out of it. And again, I blame the leadership. I blame ourselves that we don't recruit people to do this. We should call people, say, can you do it once a month? How about the first Sunday? Can you do that? And that way the burden falls on not just the same people. You are, of course, familiar with the 80-20 principle, that 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people.
Right.
Are you also aware that 80% of the problems come from 20% of the people? it But service is a lifelong calling. And there is no question in my mind that God has a meaningful place of service for each Christian in his kingdom, yet I see precious few that I perceive as fulfilling that purpose. I think we have turned church into some sort of spectator sport that we attend on Sunday morning. And we sing our songs and pray our prayers and listen to the sermon, and that's the end of that. And those are good things. All of them are good things. I would not discourage any of those things. But there is so much more. And when we offer ourselves in service in the kingdom, let's say you mow somebody's grass. Well, who gets the bigger blessing? The person whose grass you mowed or you?
The person who does the work receives the greatest blessing. Let me ask you something. How
Put me
do
on the spot.
you, I will, I will. How do you change the mindset of people that only want to be spectators?
Well, basically, I gouge their eyes out and yank their head off and spit down their neck and skin them and pour salt on them. I mean, that's my technique. What's yours?
Uh, I, I think encouragement is more
Yeah, that's what I
effective.
said.
Your encouragement is pretty rough, but
There is a.
it's
How about mentoring?
mentoring and gradual. It's as you say, they're afraid that they'll have to do it forever and ever. But even just taking that first step, I so often get the answer no, even if I just say, will you organize this meal?
Hmm.
And it's a one shot deal, but it's the answer is no, I got too much to do, can't do it.
Okay, all right. That's exactly where I was headed next. I've got too much to do.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, you hear people say, "Oh man, I'm just too busy."
Hmm.
Well, are we?
Well, it doesn't matter whether they are or not. If that's the answer they give you, there's not really anything you can do about it. I don't know how to motivate them past that first refusal.
Well, I don't buy the too busy. In most cases, I don't want to, as you say, overgeneralize. But when people say I'm too busy, what they're really saying is that is not a high enough priority for me. I have other things that are higher in priority, and those other things, uh, while perhaps meritorious, do not necessarily qualify as service in the kingdom. What are some of the things that keep us, quote, too busy?
Well, it's the things that we choose. I mean, it's always a
Yeah,
choice. It
exactly.
can be it could be anything, but it's the things that we prioritize, and there's nothing wrong with that. People should prioritize their family. They should prioritize their own health and well being, and then service is not always first on the list, and we have to accept that. So I'd usually just say thank you and maybe another time because I don't want to run them off. You pressure people too much, they just leave. So you have to find that balance.
Well, let me wind it up by saying this. I have found, especially in working in the kingdom, you're working with, well, volunteers.
Hmm.
The one thing that I can say absolutely needs to be avoided as a motivational technique is guilt. When you
That's very
start
true.
guilting people into doing it, you're going to get reluctant servants at best. You will probably run them off.
Hmm.
And that's the
True.
last thing you want.
Right.
Um, you've shared some very, very profound thoughts and ideas. So I would I would implore the listeners to this program, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it later, is to assess. Give yourself, do a scorecard. Give yourself a report card. If you had to challenge yourself to write down what are you doing in service to the kingdom of Christ, what would that report card say? If you had to write it down, how many lines on that blank piece of paper could you even fill anything in on? I think we all fall short, but I also want to emphasize that service in the kingdom is a joy and a pleasure. God did not call us to a life of mundane and drudgery. Uh, Service in the kingdom is a source of joy for me. And if it's not a source of joy, you need to do one of those checkups from the neck up type things. Um,
Can I say one more thing?
okay.
Early you said about the fourth quarter people being really set in their ways and unwilling to give up their leadership and authority, and that's true. That does happen. But when we attempt to encourage them to begin to mentor some young people to take their place, it's a very careful journey that we have to make there to balance the encouragement with the affirmation of their service, and the reason that we're asking them to mentor these young ones is because they do have the wisdom, rather than making them feel like, well, we're putting you out to pasture, because that happens too, and it's a
Well,
pain
yeah, and
for
there shouldn't be but put it this way: when you die, you're going to be abruptly put out to pasture. Now we have to
them.
bring in somebody that's a rookie, and
Hmm.
we need to train people up. It needs to be a continual process of recruitment and training. Um, Shifting gears, I think we've talked about Wellness Wednesday in the past,
Hmm.
but you sent me this for some reason. What's on your heart?
I just wanted to encourage people that they hold an important place in helping others to make good choices by being good role models. Sometimes it's just a matter of saying, uh, how can I encourage you today? How can I help you? And when it comes to making good choices for their health, I mean, there's so many temptations out there. Oh, gee, food is good. It tastes great. Of course, we want to enjoy our food, and we should. But sometimes we just need a little bit of encouragement. It's not just food I'm talking about, even being active. I mentioned three things was, to reflect on your current habits and think about what you might need to change. Because when they use spurs on horses, and I'm not advocating spurs, but the purpose of the spur, and not it's used for training, not as punishment. But the purpose of the spur is to get the horse's attention and then get it to move, either change direction or move faster. And the third one just went right out of my head.
Well, you raise an issue that when you mention discipline or punishment, we tend to use those two words so interchangeably, and they're not. They
They're
are
not.
absolutely not. And
Mm-mm.
and I heard it. The purpose of discipline is correction, not punishment. Let me repeat that. The purpose of discipline is not punishment; it is correction. It is for restoration. But so often we use discipline as punishment. So, how do you know the difference between discipline and punishment? It was best said by someone who spoke to our Sunday school class probably 30 or 40 years ago. If you see a well behaved child, you don't say that's a well punished child. You say that's a well
No,
disciplined child.
no. And
And
it
that
takes
to me illustrates.
consistency. Yes, it takes love and consistency and a constant attention to it. And the third one was change direction. So the three things that I was advocating was, pay attention to what our habits are and reflect upon what we might need to change if we want to make healthier choices, and move more, especially if we're sedentary, because activity is good for our hearts. And then change directions. If we reflect and find something that we do need to change, then that's the time to make a strategy for changing it. So everything to do with the Wellness Wednesday is is my encouragement, to help people, since that's what the book was all about anyway, honoring God with my body, so that we can make the changes that we need in our lifestyle so that it does honor God, and therefore we can better serve Him because we're in better health and have more energy and feel better because
And
our
you
health.
you would know.
Yeah,
You are you're very active.
I,
I guess having the farm that's may not be as much choice as I'm giving you credit for, but um, it helps. But well, Catherine, I think we've gone over the material that you wanted to. I wanted to ask you about your Thanksgiving at your family personally. What are some of the things that Thanksgiving means to you, and what are some of the traditions that have been in your family?
well, gathering with family, of course, is. Uh, we have a fairly large extended family. We haven't been able to get together as much as we used to. The patriarchs of the family hold the family together. So when the grandparents pass on, it's harder for the cousins to all get together. But I'm blessed that my siblings all live in the same proximity as I do, and we do try to get together, and that's that's important. And then we gather with our church family too, and I'm grateful for that too. We actually have a Thanksgiving Day lunch at church, and then we gather with our family at a different time. And it's not just the food, although that's important because I love a good Thanksgiving meal, but it's being together and fellowshipping with those that we love and being thankful for them.
We're going to have an unusual Thanksgiving this year. First, my wife bought me a fancy smoker a while back, and I've kind of learned how to use it. So, for the first time ever, we're going to smoke a turkey for Thanksgiving. I figure about
Okay.
9 hours will do it. And
Ooh.
also, we're going to have a special guest. Dell Didway and perhaps his wife will be coming to visit, and they're going to be at the Florida State game the next day. And of course,
Oh.
a hotel room is not.
Not available, I wouldn't think.
There just aren't any, and
So they're
so
going to stay
so
with you.
hopefully we'll have some guests on Thanksgiving evening. Don't know the exact schedule yet,
Mhm.
so we're looking forward to that. And of course, I always look forward to Thanksgiving to watch the Detroit Lions lose, because if you play for Detroit or Dallas, you will be working on Thanksgiving Day. And if you're on the Detroit team, you will be losing that day. they, they
Oh,
have
yeah. What happens if you're wrong?
well, it has. They have, I'm sure, won a game now and then. But you'd think they'd find somebody they could beat on Thanksgiving, but they can't seem to beat anybody.
Well, I guess
Even
it's a tradition, won't it? We'll be interested to see how that smoked turkey turns out. You'll have to
well,
tell
yeah,
us.
and usually you're so stuffed. Oh, by the way, is it stuffing or dressing? Which is it?
It depends on how you make it. If you make it inside the bird, it's stuffing. But we always make ours outside the bird, and it's dressing.
Well, my wife just got the gizzards for giblet gravy, and we're going grocery shopping Friday because we're holding our Thanksgiving meal with her family. You know,
Hmm.
Sunday, this Sunday. I'm looking forward to that. But Thanksgiving is a special time, and to reflect upon the bounty, the
Absolutely.
riches that we've been blessed with, and it's an American tradition. It's still part of our culture, although it's been commercialized or marginalized or both. That's no reason for us to buy into that as Christians. We need to be thankful, not only on Thanksgiving but year round.
All the
I wanted
time.
to take a minute, Catherine, to thank you for being a part of PJNet, just not only once a month, on this night that you share your story, but consistently when I look in the chat room, your name is there, on the roster, and we so much appreciate not only what you share on the screen, but the conversation and fellowship that you contribute to in our chat room, and we appreciate you so much, Miss Catherine. You
Oh,
mean so
thank you.
much
And
to
it's
us.
been a blessing to me to be able to do that. I consider you all family now, even though we May not get together, but
Hmm,
it's been a blessing to me.
that I'm okay. Thank you, Miss Catherine.
Okay, tell us.
You teed it up for me better than you know. And okay, she says we never get together. Remember her saying that? Well, that is about to change, folks. Let me share with you a minute. We don't have a guest at the bottom of the hour, so let me share with you. I have dreamed. I've had this vision, and we tried to do it last year, and we failed in every way, or I did. But things are looking better. Uh, Go ahead and just don't get it on your calendar yet, but know this: it'll probably be the 14th or the 21st of January. PJNet will be coming. We will be bringing the Eagle's Nest to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And it's really a blessing to see how some people have just come alongside PJNet. I had a phone call today with someone who is in our chat room. We'll just leave it at that. And I made an announcement on Facebook today that we're going to do this, and I've already gotten 2 phone calls. I had 2 others, but we're going to have what we will call a Christian Expo, and it will take place on a Saturday, and it'll probably start around 1 p.m. That will give people within the area plenty of time to drive there if they want to, and we'll probably wrap it up around 6 or 7. And during that time, we are going to allow anybody that wants to be an exhibitor the opportunity to bring a table and a tablecloth and whatever you need to set up your little exhibit. We want to open that up to any Christian or Christian ministry. If you are a Christian author, bring your books. Let's have book signings. If you have a puppet ministry, if you have a homeless ministry, whatever, and you would like to have a booth, we'll just make that available to anybody. So if you're an exhibitor, if you're an attendee, you can find out, look at the various ministries these other people are involved in. We talked about, or Catherine did, talked about service. Well, I don't know of a single ministry that doesn't need volunteers. Can't think of one. Maybe it would give you an opportunity to serve in the kingdom, and it will give you an opportunity to know what others are doing. Maybe it would inspire you, but it's going to be more than an exhibition. We're going to have speakers. Now, who are going to be our speakers? Well, you are. We're not going to have any big influencer names because we're not going to spend any money. We're going to do this on the real cheap, free. um, you might be saying, how much is this going to cost? Well, I know how much it's going to cost, but it's probably going to cost you nothing. My goal is to make this to where there is no charge for admission. It's probably going to be one of those things where you have to register, so we'll know how many people to be there. Now, this is just very out of focus at the moment. We don't even have a venue yet. We don't know how many people to expect yet, but there are some things that we do know. We are going to need attendees. There's no point in me driving to Charlotte, North Carolina with all this gear. We'll need attendees. We'll need volunteers. We'll need underwriters. We will need exhibitors. We will need speakers. And I like the idea. It came from Doug Carter, by the way, a Christian Expo. So it's not a seminar. So here's how I see it going. We got 6 hours. So let's open it up with a speaker who speaks maybe 15 minutes. And then for the next 15 minutes, we'll just have fellowship where you can visit the exhibitors and you can network and meet new people and make contacts. Then the next 15 minutes will be, a speaker. And who's going to be the speakers? Well, folks like us. Just anybody who is doing anything in the kingdom of Christ, or just share, kind of like what we do here on the air. Just share what God is doing in your life. And hopefully people will be encouraged, people will be inspired and motivated and maybe disciplined. Let's make more disciples. And I think, the first one will probably make a lot of mistakes. and there'll be a lot of kinks that we'll iron out. But I'm hoping that it goes well enough that we say, you know what, we can fix all those mistakes. Let's do one again next month, and the next month, and the next month. That's a pretty aggressive schedule. I know that. I mean, some people consider blogging once a month an aggressive schedule. Yeah. So, but we are going to need your help. So if there's anything that I've mentioned that God has kind of touched your heart, that maybe you could be involved, we need to grow as a family. We need to grow as a team, and we need to grow with each other. We need to encourage each other. And I just feel very led by God to do this kind of thing, and it's something that's been on my radar a very long time. And finally some doors are opening up, and I've had some very good initial response. And I would like to hear from you if you want to volunteer, do anything, whatever God puts on your heart. And we will hopefully firm up these plans. I know I'm speaking rather vaguely at the time, but it looks like we're committed to doing this either the 14th or 21st. Who knows? It may be the 28th of January. Who knows? But I'm past that tipping point of saying we're going to do this someday. We are making plans, and we want to incorporate you into those plans and have as many people there as possible. I would love to see it grow. It'll probably start out rather modest and very humble, but that won't discourage me. I think that's, how was it said the other day? I heard my pastor say, no ministry ever ended up where it started. It always started and grew, So maybe we can do the same thing. It's good to see so many folks that visit our chat room so faithfully. So many folks that visit us on YouTube and Rumble and all those other places. Well, gee, I guess I'm already getting calls. Let me just tell the person. I'm going to have to call you back, brother. I'll call you right back. All right, there we go. I have this new Apple Watch. This is a Christmas present. I know it's not Christmas. My wife ordered it, and when it came in, she found out it was refurbished. So you only have like 30 days to return it. So I get an early Christmas. That's great. Folks, it's just wonderful fellowshipping with you all, and so wonderful what God's doing on that screen right there. Bringing us wonderful guests and wonderful teaching and wisdom. And it's just great to be a part of it. I'm off Friday nights, but we're not off Friday nights. Steve Hazards takes over. And so I won't see you again until Monday, but please, if God has placed it on your heart to be involved in the PJNet Christian Expo, I want to hear from you. But until then, take this challenge. Well, what is the boldest thing? 2 questions. Here's the first one. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done in the kingdom of Christ? And second, how long ago was that? And of course, the challenge is to never be satisfied.